Hello guys, welcome back. In this video I'll be showing you how to use layouts. Also big congratulations to Edward. I'm really surprised you completed all the videos. I hope the video quality was worth it, and thank you. I'll show more videos later on this week. So let's get started with layouts, and let me show you what layouts are. But before that, I hope you remember what anchors are, right? Let me change the pen. You knew what anchors are, right? Anchors dot left, right, centering, fill, all this stuff. So that was one way of using positionings. You know what a column is, right? What a column is, what a row is, right? Basically, row means all the items will be aligned side by side. You can also give some spacing. Column means all the items will be aligned from top to bottom, also with some spacing, right? Now, rows and columns are one way of positioning items relative to each other. There is also something called column layout and row layout and grid layout and stack layout. So anyway, these three are the most important stuff, right? Column, row and grid. So in this video I'll be showing you how to work with that. So let's get started with column layout. It's very easy. As you know, we have to import quick dot layouts for using layouts in our application. Now let's get started with column layout, and let's say it's in the center and there's no center in parent. Let's give some spacing of, let's say, 30. Now remember something, this component is not inside, this component is not inside another layout, right? The parent of this column layout is a simple window, there is no layout as a parent. That's why we have to use anchors here, right? But any item inside this column layout, any direct child of this column layout, let's forget row, let's call it rectangle, this has to have layout properties for positioning. So I will say layout dot fill, or instead of fill bit I'll say layout dot preferred width. You do remember we had something called width and height and implicit width and implicit height, right? So instead of giving width and height, the best way is to give preferred width. So I'll say preferred width 400 and layout dot preferred height of, let's say, 200. 400 is too wide, but anyway, let's work with that. And the color will be any random color. Let's see. So it's greenish brown. Anyway, after this we'll add another button, and there is no need to, okay, for button we have to obviously import quick controls, and for the text I'll say click me, right? So anyway, let's run the application once. And as you can see, it says click me. Now how to center this button, how to bring it in the horizontal center? You cannot say anchors dot horizontal center is parent dot horizontal center. This is not a good way, and this is, you cannot do that because this button is inside a layout. So you have to do it layout way. So to center it, you have to say layout dot alignment, and then you have to use queues enum q dot align h center, right? Let's see. Perfect. Now you can also add other flags like q.align top or q.align v center for vertical center. H center means horizontal center. And this or, I hope you remember what this is, right? These are flags, and you have to, if you want to add multiple flags, you have to use or operator. So let's see. And actually v center won't do anything because there is no, this is not a row, so there is no need to vertically align with anything. But yeah, as you can see, if you change the width and height, this will remain the same because we have given the preferred width and height. Instead of that, we can say one thing, anchors dot fill parent. So the column layout will cover the entire window. And now let's see. As you've seen, like it broke, right? Now why did it break? Because this column layout will obviously try to align everything in the center. Like for example, let's say this is the window and we have a column layout with only one button, right? And this column layout, you have to say, if you say anchors.fill parent, this layout will cover the whole space, right? Now where should it place the button? In the top? No, right? In the top left? No, it will place in the center. This is how it's designed. So if you want this rectangle to always be on the top, you have to say layout.alignment q.align top, as you have guessed. My bad, it's top. Now, as you've seen, the rectangle is on the top. Now if you also want it to be on the top as well as the horizontal center, I'll say this one, and instead of this I'll also say here top. Excuse me. But still, if you see, there is a, this is at the bottom, so why is that? Let's see if I remove this. Okay, so somehow it's actually pushing the item at the bottom, so there is something which is eating the space. If you don't want that, one way of fixing this is I'll only assign the top left it will be colon, and the right, and I'll say margins of 30, so there is some margin from the bottom. Now this column layout is not actually covering the whole parent. Now it will only cover whatever like the height of its inner content is, right? So this is one way of fixing the issue which we faced earlier. So now you don't need this align top thing, right? Yeah, but there is another way of fixing that issue. So let's go back. Anchors.fill parent, and let's see, this button will be pushed at the bottom. So if you don't want that, you can obviously have a dummy item and it will say layout.fill height true. So it will cover the entire available height. After placing these two, if any height is remaining, this item will cover that entire height. And because item is something which is not visible, this is not a visible thing, it's only to eat up space or something like. So now this thing is item, but you cannot see because there is, this item is not a visible component, it's not a button or rectangle, right? If you see the definition, the item type is the base of all visual items, but it's not visible, it has no visual appearance. If you see, it says it has no visual appearance. It's only, it can be used to eat up space or like define some stuff, right? But here we are using it to eat up the space. So I hope you remember what fill height is, right? Now if I remove this, and instead of preferred height, if I say layout dot fill height true, as you have guessed, this rectangle will try to eat up all the available height minus the height of the button. So this button requires some height and there is some spacing. Apart from that, whatever height is available, this rectangle will try to eat up that, right? Now if you want the rectangle to stop at a certain point, if you don't want the rectangle to, let me also say fill width true. Now this will also eat up the entire width. So as you have seen, it has taken up the entire width. If you give some margins, let's say 30, now it will eat up the entire width minus 2 into margins, because there is 30 on the left and 30 on the right, so it will deduct 60 points and the rest will be assigned. So if you want to limit the amount of it, like if you want to say the width should not exceed like 500 points or 700 points, so there is a property which is normally not available for columns, but this is exclusive to layout, which is maximum width and maximum height. Obviously it's, if you set it to 700, you will see that it will not expand 700. As you have seen, it has not expanded apart from this. This is 700, right? Obviously you can like add a text, and if I add a text color white, and that actual value will be parent.width. Now you'll be able to see the actual, okay, it should have centered in the parent. Yeah, as you see, the font size is small, but if I increase the font size, it will be visible to you. Also, here you can use anchors.center in parent. Now, why did I not use layout here? Because the parent of this text is a rectangle. This is not a layout. This is a layout. That's why I used layouts here. But for this text, the immediate parent is rectangle, which is not a layout. So here you have to use anchors. You cannot just say layout dot alignment or something like. You cannot do that here, because the parent of this text is a rectangle. That's why you have to use anchors here. If inside this there was another button, right? Suppose, right, there also you have to use anchors. Suppose inside the button there was a row layout. Here also you will use anchors, because the parent of this row layout is a button. The button is a normal component, right? But inside this row layout, let's say there was another text. Here you have to use layout dot alignment or stuff like that, because the parent of this text is a row layout. I hope you got me. Let's see. Excuse me. As you can see, it's 580. It will increase up to 700 and stop there. So yep. Let me change the button material. Let's see now. Yep, I think it's visible now. Yep. So anyway, this was about column layout. Very simple stuff. Like, you can also set minimum width so that it will not be lesser than a certain width. So if I say 400, you'll see that if it doesn't get enough space, it will like, let me show you. See, it ignored the margins, right? It ignored the margins because enough space was not available, but this item has to have a 400 width, so it will ignore the margins and like cut itself from the window. So these two things, minimum width, maximum width, preferred width, I hope you got what these are, right? Preferred width means if I say layout dot preferred width of, let's say 500, and see, now you will see it's not like working properly, right? The preferred width stuff is not working because we have already set fill width to true, so this is ignored, this thing is ignored. But if I don't set fill width to true, it will always be 500. It's basically simply width. Yeah, it will always be 500. It's basically simply just width, right? But instead of setting width, the best approach is to set preferred width, because this column layout, it itself does not have any width or height. If you have observed, this window has a width and height. This has a height, width, right? All the components have a width and height, but column layout itself does not have any width or height. You can say fill parent, right? If you don't do this, it will decide what the height of this total stuff, and that will be its own height. For example, let's say it has, let me go to the whiteboard, and let's say we have 3 buttons, one button here, one button here, and one big button here. So whatever the height of this stuff is, that will be the height of the column layout. So it calculates its height based on the height of the children, right? Similar goes for the width, right? The same thing goes for its width. Whatever is the width of the maximum child, it will take the width. So that's why preferred width and preferred height is suggested, so that we can directly tell the column layout, hey, this is the preferred width of button, this is the preferred width, this is the preferred width. So it's easy for it to choose, easy for the compiler to choose the actual width instead of calculating it manually each time, right? That's very costly. So that's why always use preferred width and preferred height, fill width, minimum width, maximum width, like all in width with the layout stuff, right? So that was about column layout. I hope you didn't get confused. Very simple stuff. Then we go with row layout, same thing. Let's say spacing 40 and we have 2 buttons. Text, first button and the second one. Second button. Now let's see. It will be at the top left because we have not centered it. So yeah, very simple stuff, right? If you say fill width true, it will try to take the whole width. but there is no width of the row layout. So it does not actually take the whole width, because you have to say anchors.fill parent.width parent.width. Now make sure that this is simply width, not layout or something, because the parent of this row layout is a simple window. So do not say layout dot preferred width. You will not get confused. You use layouts inside any child of a layout. Now as you can see, the width is full, right? Obviously you can use margins and stuff like that, right? Now another thing is called grid layout, but for that let me add a rectangle. Anchors dot fill parent. Let's do this. I think, sorry, I think today is not my day. Margins will be 30 and the color will be gray. Now inside this rectangle, also you have to center in the parent. Don't have to, sorry, we have already done fill. So inside this rectangle we'll add a grid layout. Now what is a grid? Let me show you. Did I add an image? No. So let me show you what a grid is. Actually this is only a grid, right? You see these boxes, right? This is a grid with cells. So this box is a cell, this is also a cell, this is also a cell, and this whole thing is a grid, right? So let's say you have 10 items and you want to show 3 items per row. So for that you need a grid, right? So this will be the ordering like this, right? So for that you need something called a grid, GRID. So let's start with that. Obviously the grid layout, I'll say anchors.fill parent. I have used anchors in grid layout because the parent is a simple rectangle. I'm repeating myself because this is very confusing. That's why I hope you're not getting bored. Anyway, there is something called columns. These are the number of columns you want. Columns, let me clarify what rows and columns are. This is a row, right? This is a row, this is a row, this is a row, and this is a column, this is a column, this is a column. So let's say in a grid you want 3 items in a row. So for that you need 3 columns, right? So that's why the columns will be 3. Now after that, forget about the rows. There is some spacing, but for spacing you need column spacing and row spacing, right? There is no individual spacing. Like for example, if you remember what a row layout or simply row was, there we had something called spacing, right? But here you have to specify spacing for what? For column or for row. So if I want column spacing, I will simply say column spacing and I will say 10, and if I want spacing for row, I'll say row spacing and let's say 20. And now let's add the components inside this grid layout. So let me add a repeater. Again, a new component. Let me show you what a repeater is. It's actually very simple. Like you have to provide a model and the individual item which will be repeated. For example, let's say I have a model of 10 because I want 10 items, and each item will be a rectangle with color, let's say blue, and let's say width of let's say 200, height of let's say 200. Now if you increase this, you can see obviously this got totally messed up because the width and height of this should be calculated based on the width and height of the grid. So let's say the ID is my grid. So let's also account for the spacing. So the width will be my grid dot width minus now you have to use some mathematics here. Let's calculate. Let's say this is the grid, right? This is our grid and there are 3 items. So there is a spacing here and there is a spacing here, right? So 2 times spacing, and let's say the total width is W. So W minus 2 times spacing divided by 3, that should be the width of each item, right? So minus 2 times column spacing, so my grid dot column spacing, because that is a property of my grid. Sorry for that. Now whole of this whole divided by 3. Let's see. Okay, I think the width is totally gone. Something is messed up, right? I think I did some mistake. Let's remove this divided by 3 and see. Okay, so this grid layout, I think we cannot use IDs here, but there must be some way of accessing that. There is also a property called uniform cell spacing, uniform cell width and cell height. Let's see if we can work with that. Let's set it to true and see. And instead of this, let's say anchors.fill pairing. Let's see if it tries to uniformly set the fill height. Okay, so we cannot use anchors.fill, so let's say layout.fill height true. Because obviously this is inside a grid layout. Forget this repeater. Each of this rectangle will be placed here. This repeater, what it actually does is, it will just copy this rectangle these many times, right? So in the end, this rectangle will be placed inside this grid layout. So obviously inside a grid layout, we have to use layout. Let's see if it works. Yeah, it worked perfectly. Thank God. So uniform cell width and cell height is a lifesaver. Otherwise, we have to calculate some way or another, right? If I don't set this, and let's see if we can use some preferred height and width stuff, right? So I'll say preferred height of, let's say 200. 200 is too large. 150, and color will be random. So I'll say q.rgba math.random and copy it 3 times. I hope you are not getting bored, right? Because this layout stuff is really confusing at a first glance. Preferred width. Now this will be calculation, right? So width minus 2 times spacing divided by 3. So let's see if it works. Let's give some hard-coded value of 10. And let's divide by 2 just for testing purposes. So that worked. Let's divide by 3. So that worked too. Very shitty colors, my bad. But if that works, let's try migrate. And perfect. Now the same thing can be done for height, obviously, right? Because each item, but instead of doing calculations on the height, you can I'll show you how to use should I show now? Actually there is something called flickable, and that means you can scroll, there is a scroll area stuff, right? But I think this is too much for this video, but I'll show you how to work with that, right? So you can scroll stuff properly. But anyway, I think this video will be expanded too much, but thank you for watching. I hope you are not getting bored. I will once again say this, what this repeater does is, it will just create 10 instances of this rectangle inside it. So it's, if you set model to 3, and if you completely remove this, it's the same thing. This grid layout will have 3 children, right? So this repeater does that. Excuse me. Yep. So this repeater does that. It will copy this 3 times. So instead of manual working, like instead of manually doing it 3 times ourselves, it's wise to use repeater, right? So that's that. This was grid layout. Instead of doing this, you can also use uniform cell spacing, cells with uniform cell height. But yeah, we can also use mathematical calculations. So thank you for watching. I hope you are not getting bored, and take care.